Hello and welcome, Mr. Arindom Datta. This is Prateep Basu, everyone, founder and CEO of SatSure, and we have with us Mr. Arindom Datta, who is an expert in the banking space globally. Today, we'll be doing a question and answer session with Mr. Datta regarding the use of satellite imagery and analytics for improving the financial inclusion of smallholder farmers.
Thanks, Prateep. From the 30 years of experience of agriculture financing, especially, reaching out to smallholder farmers in the emerging markets, the biggest bane that we have seen is the transaction cost. That when you are trying to originate, smallholder farmers was spread across deep rural areas, the cost of servicing the farmers and to do the credit underwriting is very, very high. And second is the cost of monitoring, which leads to portfolio quality issues. That's been the biggest pain, that how do we get real-time information of the farmers, what they are growing, and what the situation of the crop is, where they are going to sell the crops, and what the expected realization of the crops are. That's the farmer's ability to pay to be good farmers, good businessmen. And so, Pradeep, in this context, I would like to understand from you that what are the kind of technology and remote sensing and machine learning solutions that SatSure has to be able to work with the banking and financial services sector to enhance the flow of credit to farmers, especially smallholder farmers?
That's a great question, Arindam. Let me give a quick background of the technology itself. So, remote sensing has been there for more than 3 decades, and mostly public sector and research organizations have used it for planning purposes, mapping crops, etc., in agriculture sector. See, one of the key advantages it provides from servicing the finance sector is that via remote sensing, you can have data collection and data analysis at scale. And the scale at which farming happens, it's impossible to beat remote sensing that way. But the most important part is the translation of this data into information that is very consumable. Now, from a financing point of view, as you mentioned previously, transaction cost and the risk cost. These are two very important things to understand that in the agriculture context, these risks are today a lot more induced due to the frequency of climatic events, the impact of such climate events on the production and on the farmer's income. So being able to assess that was the key thing that banks wanted as part of their risk management thing, as well as being able to reach farmers with minimum number of physical branches and able to do their appraisal or evaluation in a digital mode was another part of reducing that transaction cost, not just the risk cost. So remote sensing data helps in doing both of them. But again, data is just data. The machine learning component comes when you have to actually translate that data into information. For example, what crop is grown, the history of crop in a parcel of land, the history of its production, and just using remote sensing, you cannot predict production or you cannot predict irrigation. You will have to have feedback data, ground collected data. So it's a very interwoven process where both the eyes in the sky and the boots on the ground comes together, is analyzed using machine learning, and then it translates into palatable and digestible information for the banks to take their credit decisions, as well as to monitor their portfolio across with a very minimal cost of servicing.
Technology, especially remote sensing solutions, would help the banks to do better underwriting and to be able to monitor large portfolios much more efficiently than what they are doing. Now, because of the solutions and the climate challenge that you mentioned, so I would guess that your solutions would be also very, very useful and helpful for the real sector food and agri players, whether they're input players, whether they are procurement agencies, whether they are large processors, because they also work with smallholder farmers, and ultimately how the crop is grown and how efficiently information is transmitted along the value chain is very, very important for business decision. Can you tell us a little bit about how SatSure can help work with the larger ecosystem of agriculture and food players?
We are already doing that. Indeed, the ecosystem is very integrated. So if you are able to, let's say, provide banks with information such as what I mentioned earlier, the same information can be aggregated, at a village level, at a sub district or district level, and then it creates a lot more density of information for other players in the ecosystem, not just the cropping patterns, but also the timing signals, like when the sowing is happening, where the sowing is happening, where the harvesting is happening, or when you predict how much harvest is going to come and where, in which weeks it's going to happen. So stuff like that becomes intelligence for procurement, intelligence for placement of your inventory. When you embed more and more farm level data into it, then it can also become an advisory intelligence to farmers. So overall, the movement of such kind of data sets, whether it's satellite remote sensing or weather data, combined with the all kinds of auxiliary data and analysis of it using data science, machine learning, etc., creates value across the entire ecosystem, which essentially gives a better decision making quality for everyone, from farmers to the people who are selling to farmers, to people who are financing or insurance to farmers, and at a policy level as well.
And Prateep, we also briefly touch upon climate. Now, that's becoming a very big story, a difficult story, especially in the agriculture sector when food security is becoming so important. We'll have a population of approximately 10 billion by 2050. Globally, about 40% of the population is dependent directly on agriculture for their livelihoods. Now, from a climate solution perspective, especially on the adaptation and resilience side, would you have some solutions, or would you be building up solutions for the food and agri large corporates or for the banking sector?
For us, the way we operate is that we innovate sectorially. So our first set of innovations happened with the banking and insurance sector. Today, we are working on data products, but attuned to the kind of requirements of, let's say, a seed company, a chemical company, an FMCG company. So most of their demand is coming from the fact that the climate resiliency in their business process is minimal. So use this kind of data and information that they consume from us helps them to build the resiliency to adapt in terms of, let's say, lowered production or delayed sowing or changing harvest and sowing times because of the change in monsoons, etc. So hence the intelligence that we are building, it can packaged as per the context of the user and the industry, it can be very much used for adaptation to the vagaries of climatic variables and climate change.
Very, very useful and wonderful to hear that, Prateep. And last question, a very generic question. Now, you guys come in with a lot of expertise on on deep learning, on data, on remote sensing, on AI, machine learning, etc. Now, for the larger ecosystem players, including let's say the large farmer base, the SMEs, the processors, the agriculture companies, they do not understand all this technology. Now, how do you make it understandable and easy for adoption for all these different stakeholders so that they don't see the science behind it, but they see the utility of the information that you're providing as a direct input for them to take better businesses?
I think there is a lot of work to be done on this front. When I say work, it is a combination of the product design itself. It starts from the availability of data, the kind of spectral bands required to, let's say, collect information, not just on the crop health and all, but also soil quality, moisture. So there are multiple different intelligence at a farm level that can be generated to improve upon irrigation and farming practices, etc. But I would say the more important part from an adoption perspective is the way user applications are designed. It has to actually be understood and very easy to use by farmers, whether they are big farmers or small farmers. I think distribution can always be figured out, but the adoption is always based on how again easily understandable and actionable you make it to the person. So there will be a lot of integration of associated technologies like I already saw some folks working on something called Kisan GPT. So how you bring in natural language based advisories, how you create advisories in vernacular language, how you make this information not like move from the current pixel to finally numbers and actions. So I think that's the journey for the geospatial sector, especially in the context of BFSI and agri and climate change.
Thanks, Prateep. Looks very exciting, and I wish you all the best in your endeavors.